Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to my tour of my little book room here. A very sunny little book room right now, but of course it was... First thing this morning, there was, I think, 17 drops of rain in the air. It was not actually raining. It wasn't even misting. It was just a few drops of rain, individual drops of rain, and that caused a certain someone to say, "Oh, no, I don't think so. It'll be hours before I can get her to trust to go out again." but we are down on the bottom shelf here of this Joe bookcase, which now towers over me. So the way I've been doing this, I will do this bottom shelf, and then I will go all the way up to the top of the next one. So let's see. Let's start and get these done with. This is Henry Beadle Huff. This is his great book, Country Editor. There he is with his signature collie. This is a memoir by a wonderful old man of being the editor of basically a small town country newspaper. It just happens to be on an island. It happens to be on the island of Martha's Vineyard. This is his story about inheriting, being given, and then running the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, a broadsheet newspaper on the island of Martha's Vineyard, and it is wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. I have a couple of different editions of this book. I'm hoping that I don't have a couple of editions in this room. That is a problem that we have been noticing, that I have been noticing, is that there are too many duplicates here for a room that doesn't have infinite space. Okay, then we have a Time Inc. book. I've mentioned these before on this channel many times. They're very stiff binding, very cardboardy covers. They don't hold up well under a reread, and they were all printed in hardcovers as well, in a uniform maroon and gold set of naked hardcovers, no dust jackets. So you can't, the binding on those isn't anything to write home about either, but at least they're a little sturdier. You can get these things. Secondhand, you can find them in a sturdier format. But sometimes the cover design, in fact, a lot of times the cover design on these things is so nice that I want it in the paperback. I'm constantly rebuying them, I guess. And that I say constantly, but that process is doomed because these things were made for only a few years and haven't been made in 60 years. So it stands to reason that there's not an infinite number of them. It stands to reason that they're going to be harder and harder to find in used bookstores, just like, for instance, older mass market paperbacks are harder and harder to find in used bookstores just in general, no matter what it is. Not necessarily because of collectors, although collectors are a blight on the universe, but because there's a limited number of these things. And this is Ralph Roeder. This is his book, The Man of the Renaissance. And I love that cover. So I have reinforced the daylights out of this thing just in an attempt to keep it alive. And it is full of my annotations. It's full of underlined passages. This is Roeder's profile of a bunch of famous a bunch of famous Renaissance men. So you get Artino, you get Machiavelli, pricelessly you get Machiavelli, and also Savonarola. This is my book to go to for Machiavelli, but I love reading about all the others as well. So here we have another example. This is a work of history, of biographical focused history, and yet it's in this room instead of with all the other histories and biographies. So what's going on there? What's going on there? Okay, then we have, when did this come out? This is from 1909, and this is by William Winter, and it is his book Old Friends, which is a collection of literary profiles. Being literary, here, let me get it's one of those onion skin covers. Being literary recollections of other days. Because in the first decade of the first 15 years of the 20th century, maudlin, weepy sentimentality was the order of the day. Oh, I'm thinking about olden days. I'm thinking about other times, happier days. And I want to go, I thought it was ridiculous at the time. I want to go back and just slap those men. I want to slap them in the face and say, you have any idea not only how much energy you're wasting being this maudlin and this sappy, but also what a fool you are. How foolish you sound to the generations that would go through World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II. You're getting all sappy and sentimental for bygone days, when you're living in paradise, when almost anyone would say you're living in a blessed age, before the terrors of the 20th century. But anyway, so what is this? Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Thomas Bailey Aldrich, Charles Dickens, Wilkie Collins, Artemus Ward. So there's a lot of Steve stuff here. James Russell Lowell. Yes, okay. I'm assuming that President Eliot is going to be in here. Oh my, even more obscure figures. Good Lord. And then general literary stuff. So I have a whole wall of bookcases for this kind of book. Why this one is in here, I don't know. And if I don't know that, if I can pick this off the shelf and say, all right, well, this is the exception. This is in here when I have a section for it. If I can pick it off the shelf and not immediately know why it's here, then it shouldn't be here. Anyway, okay, then we have a wonderful booktube thing that happened. By random chance at my used bookstore, I found a Canadian trade paperback of Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel with the deckled edges and the French flaps. I'd already read this a few times. I got the galley copy from the publisher. I got the finished copy from the publisher. I'd already read this a few times, but I loved this edition. Just the floppy handiness of it. So I got it from the Brattle, and I reread it, and I re-annotated it, and I also mentioned it on this channel. I mentioned how much I loved it, and sure enough, this is just amazing. These things are not wanting to go back on the shelf. Sure enough, you people found me the Canadian trade paperbacks of the other two books. So I dutifully reread them. There's the Canadian paperback of Bring Up the Bodies. And then finally, this immense Canadian trade paperback of The Mirror and the Light, which one of you just found at a library sale, hence the condition, and just decided to send it along. Just at pure booktube magic that I mentioned this. You all knew that I needed another copy of Hilary Mantel like I needed a hole in the head, and you did it anyway. You indulged me anyway. Then we have the great Bernard Knox. This is his book, The Oldest Dead White European Males. The title was derived from cries of outrage and fake outrage decades and decades ago about all the dead white European males who dominate college reading lists and the Western canon. And Bernard Knox was gently, in this book, among other essays in here, he's gently pushing against that idea. He, of course, had no idea how bad things would get. None at all. None at all. That wave of weird performative virtue signaling would get so strong that it would actually help to sweep a fascist autocracy into power in rebellion against it. No academic at the time could possibly have imagined it. Not saying that excuses it, but I love these things. I love anything basically that he writes. Then this thing here, I have read my copy of this just to hell and gone. And maybe I should be more gentle with it, because the impression I get is that it's a little collectible and that I might have trouble finding another copy. I doubt that will be true. The Brattle will provide. The Brattle sees everything. This is the Dune Encyclopedia, which is just full of illustrations and long blocks of double column prose of the background of Frank Herbert's novel Dune. And it's sequelia. And this is a lot more than that. This is a lot more than just an encyclopedia. Like, like for instance, there'll be an entry in here on the Butlerian Jihad, which is an event that is referenced in the Dune books but never described. Of course, it takes place long before the novel Dune begins, in which there is a jihad, there is a violent uprising against what Frank Herbert did not know to call AI. But we would instantly recognize as that, which resulted in an abiding command: "Thou shalt not make a machine in the image of a human mind." And Herbert realized when he was conceiving Dune, his novel Dune, one of the things you had to do, you don't have to do it anymore. In the age of romanticy, you don't have to do it anymore. But one of the things that you used to have to do was called world building, where you not only envisioned what the story that you wanted to tell, but built the world that would be internally consistent. A vast undertaking that science fiction and especially fantasy writers don't do anymore. They just don't bother to do it. The identity politics is more important than that. Is your big hulking green female orc in love with your perky girl boss human bartender? Are they in love with each other? That's what matters, is the queer element, not the world building. Anyway, Herbert quickly realized, I think, in the drafting of Dune, that he needed an explanation for why this society that he is dreaming up is quasi-feudal. Why is it quasi-feudal? Why is it so reminiscent of the Renaissance, of the Italian Renaissance, for instance, or the late medieval period? And I think at some level, I don't know if he did it consciously, but on some level he realized that what he needed was some reason why technology has not completely taken over society. And the Butlerian Jihad was his reason for that. Why you have people who perform the functions of computers, for instance, or higher tech of some kind or other. Why there'd be a black market for higher tech. And maybe even a religious society built around that black market. So you get an entry in here for the Butlerian Jihad, but you get so much more in this book. There are vast stories in here. Just vast stories that don't have any bearing at all on the Dune novels. They're just fascinating in their own right. About the first ship to have faster than light travel, or the first person to discover what spice can do to the human body. This, in other words, this sound, I won't need to dwell on it too much. This sounds like just a reference work, like Julian May's Pleistocene Companion or Catherine Kurtz's Durini Archives or stuff like that. And it isn't. It isn't. You can actually sit down and read this from front to back like a work of fiction, with plenty of dramatic beats. I would say it's much closer to, the usual thing that you would think of here for science fiction and fantasy. Once upon a time, when world building was done, there would be a companion volume. And there have been many, like, for instance, Lord of the Rings, companion volumes. And you might see this and think that it's like that. But I would say this is much closer to what the Silmarillion is for the Lord of the Rings. There are a lot of stories in here. I don't quite know why. I'm not up on my science fiction trivia, so I don't quite know why this has not been reprinted. Why is this paperback collectible? I don't actually know the answer to that question. Maybe one of you does. But I doubt it, because in order to know the answer to that question in all the mind-numbing trivial detail that it requires, you would have to be a science fiction fantasy guy. You'd have to be one of these people that knows everything there is to know about that subject, but doesn't know the eye color of your own mother. And would never, under any circumstances imaginable, for any reason, at any cost of peril, read one of the Bronte sisters. You'd never in a million years do it. You just wouldn't do it. And you'd have to be that kind of person to know the reason, I would think. Maybe not. Maybe if there's you would know the reason if you're that kind of person. But my point is, if you're that kind of person, you won't watch this channel. So who knows? Then we have something from, is this Princeton? Yeah. Princeton University Press brought out a lovely standalone book of an essay on man by Alexander Pope, his long poem. That has lovely, long, lovely passages in it. Then that's all this is. It's got a scholarly introduction, but then you've got the poem with just tons of footnotes. The poem that once upon a time people had to memorize huge chunks of it, including the line that is one of the dumbest things that I have ever read by anyone in prose or poetry ever. That whatever is right. What? Could anything be more self-evidently, sweepingly, comprehensively wrong than that? But still, okay. Here we have a bit of magic. This is by Eugene Rice. This is Saint Jerome in the Renaissance. This is a book about the rather extensive Jerome idolatry that happened in the Renaissance, and why that is, and where it crops up in all sorts of writers. Most notably, of course, Erasmus, but lots of other people too. And this is Brattle. The Brattle bookstore is here in Boston is my used bookstore, and this is a pure sign of Brattle magic, because I found a trade paperback of this book at the shop for $1. That's magical right there, and I read it and loved it. I think I'd read it when it first came out, but I read it and loved it, that trade paperback. And I sat back when I was finished with it and thought, what I really want is a hardcover of this that can stand a strain, because I know I'm going to read this again. And instead of thinking what most people would think, most people with their half-price books or whatever would, if they found a paperback copy of St. Jerome in the Renaissance, they would think, this is the find of the year. I never see stuff like this at this used bookstore or that my Oxfam shop or whatever. Most people, if they did that, would say, well, then I better take good care of this paperback because I am never going to see this book a second time. Whereas when I sat back from that paperback, I said, well, the Brattle will provide. A hardcover will show up eventually, and one did. One showed up, of course. So now I have it. That's great. The angle is a little wrong here. Let's see what this next one is. What is this? Oh, okay. All right, this is just another one of those Boston guidebooks. We've seen a few of them. I have a bunch of Boston guidebooks, and right now a significant chunk of my listenership is saying, yes, but you don't have them all together. You should have them all on the same shelf. They aren't on the same shelf, it's true. This is Days and Ways in Old Boston, and it is just, this is a reprint of a much older book. This is just a, there you go. This is just a guidebook to basically the history of Boston, but when you're doing, before the destruction of Scully Square, a book about the history of Boston would also be a book about the sights of Boston, because there was no major destructive urban renewal that destroyed Scully Square, where I had lots of used bookstore credit. Did the city reimburse me for that? No. All right. Then we have, this is just another Boston book. This is just a handbook to the art and architecture of the Boston Public Library. That is the Boston Public Library. That is my library. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous building. That is the entrance to the old building. There's also a new building that was attached to it to expand its functions. And forever and ever, the new building was a monument to Boston brutalism, so it was an eyesore and an embarrassment. But the library decided to renovate and redo the old building, or the new building, rather, the Johnson building. And considering that the thing was built as a square block of granite that was meant to look more like a prison than a library, the renewal did about as much as you can do. They made it into a beautiful building. So now the library is just a gem that I totally ignore. I do not go to the Boston Public Library. I should live at the Boston Public Library, but I don't. That is the entrance to the old building. This is, you can tell that it's a little old picture because not only is that second flag not there, but these railways are gone. And also the two, there's this figure here, and then there's a companion figure right over here, just out of view. They were sandblasted back to their original bronze when we were having a big Olympic event in Boston. And so they are not bright green anymore. They're getting there, but they're not quite there. And you can't make it out in this picture really, but right over the middle door is an engraving in stone that says "Free to All." Just simply "Free to All." This is the old building, the McKim Mead and White building. And again, you're not going to be able to make it out. But running all the way around the exterior of the old building are names of great literary figures carved into the stone. I love the old Boston Public Library. I absolutely love it. And this is a guide to all the stuff that's in there. All the marble busts, all the John Singer Sargent murals, everything that's in there. Okay, all right. Well, there is a little concentration here. This is by Michael Wentworth. This is Look Again. And this is a guide not to the art of the Boston Public Library, but to the art of the Boston Athenaeum, a private library in Boston, which is also loaded with artwork. The Athenaeum is one of the most beautiful interior spaces in the world, and is 5 stories of beautiful artwork. And I have spent a huge amount of time. I wonder if they give you a picture of the Athenaeum. No, they give you a picture of himself. But not the, well, it's nothing to look at on the outside. It's just a bland face on the outside, but the inside is gorgeous. And I used to joke for years. I used to go to the Athenaeum, the 5th floor of the Athenaeum, forever and ever. That was my most sacred space. And I used to joke with people that the Athenaeum has so much old artwork that it's even hung in the stairwells. And it's true. There's a little very utilitarian stairwell that you can use to go all the way up the building. You don't have to take the elevator. And there are framed portraits of old Bostonian Brahmins all the way up and down that staircase. But this is delightful. I don't know of a newer version that looks at the artwork that's in the Athenaeum's collection. What is this next one? Oh my God. All right. Well, the theme continues. This is another old guide to the Boston Statehouse. That is the Boston Statehouse that with the famous gold leaf dome, Hancock's dome, that sits at the top of Boston Common, overlooks Boston Common. I am I am very, very familiar with the Statehouse as well, especially the library, which is not open to the public. But also all of the buildings, all of the hideaways in here. I know so many people who have worked in this building over the decades that I know every inch of it. Every inch of its basement, the sub-basements, the little basement post office that's fully functional. It's not just for members. It's fully functional. You can use it there. Once upon a time, this is 10 feet away from the Athenaeum. So once upon a time, I had, for a long time, a routine that just kept me up in that area of Beacon Hill. I also had a place to go. In addition to the restaurant where I had lunch and the Athenaeum where I did all my work and the Statehouse where I hobnobbed and chatted and also did postal work, sent packages, because I've been sending books to people forever. And what a thanks do I get. In addition to all of that, I also had a place to dally up there on Beacon Hill. So for a long time, these things were part of my life, just an inextricable part of my life. And I have this old guidebook to the architecture and the art of the Statehouse. So is this next one going to be about Boston? Yes, it is. This is Mr. Bulfinch's Boston. This is a little guide to the Bulfinch architecture in Boston. All the different kinds, domestic and civic and whatnot, with little potted histories. So there's a little block of Boston stuff here. And then we can finish up with this last one, which is not that. It's not anything like that. It's this. It's Forever Rumpole. A newer, when it came out, a new anthology. This is now 10 years old, I think. Oh no, 2011. Okay. Yeah, this is older than 10 years. And this is a collection of the stories of Horace Rumpole of the Old Bailey. This is an Old Bailey hack who never pleads guilty. And John Mortimer wrote Rumpole novels, but he also he started Rumpole out in short stories. And I saw that this was coming out and pitched it to my editor at the time, who went for it hook, line, and sinker. So I got a chance to write about a new Rumpole collection, which was great. I got a chance to write about it and also be paid money for it. So this is just a collection of those stories. Again, if I remember, I will try to find my review. So this is Rumpole and the Younger Generation, Rumpole and the Show Folk, Rumpole and the Tap End, where Guthrie Featherstone just cannot stop offending the women of England. He tries, but he just can't stop doing it. Rumpole and the Bubble Reputation, which is probably it's one of my favorite Rumpole stories. It's probably not my most favorite, but it's one of my favorite ones, where Rumpole tackles Lady Amelia Nettleship, the bottler of historical bilge water, the writer of horrible historical romance novels. Rumpole a la carte, which I've mentioned on this channel, Rumpole and the Children of the Devil, Rumpole on Trial, where he is before Ollie Oliphant and is in danger of being booted out of chambers because it looks like he's talked to a client when he shouldn't, and told the client to get it out. Just have it out. When he's actually talking about something else. He's not actually compromising a client. Rumpole and the Way Through the Woods, Rumpole and the Angel of Death, Rumpole and the Old Familiar Faces, Rumpole Rests His Case. Yeah, the Old Familiar Faces, Rests His Case, Primrose Path, Redeemed, those are all newer Rumpole stories. They're why this anthology was made. So it was a lot of fun to do. And again, I hear those perky little voices saying, but don't you have Rumpole all over the room? Wouldn't you really want all your Rumpole together? Maybe I would. Anyway, that is this bottom shelf. The only thing that is not a book is it's a Roman coin. So we'll just put that on the shelf. I can't buy anything anymore. So that is this shelf, and now we will move to the next bookcase all the way at the top. So I'll wrap this up for now. I can't keep these at 15 minutes, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.